Hello, lovely Gayle.
Hello.
I'm excited about this conversation, but I'm going to start by asking the same question I ask everyone, which is, what is sacrosanct or valuable and important to you?
Big question.
Just one thing, yeah?
Well, I suppose it's going to be no surprise. I'd say love. Love for all things, love for myself, love for nature, particularly at the moment. It's been calling me the last few years. I think relationships are really sacrosanct to me because I feel that it's in relationship that our expansion and contraction happens and shows us where, we can find more joy and happiness, but also in the more sort of challenging moments where there's parts of us that need to be seen and heard and healed. So yeah, love, in short, seeing as my whole life for the last 20 years has been dedicating to teaching love, I'm sure that's not a surprise to you.
Not at all. And sometimes I write down the name of what I think the episode is going to be called at the beginning, and sometimes I don't, because I'm like, I have no idea. And I actually wrote Love Creates Love right at the beginning because it's, something that is so important to you, and so much of what you're about is about that. And I'm curious, because I don't know the very beginnings of your story and kind of how, the path that came to being you teaching love all of those years ago. But did you grow up in a loving environment? Were you taught love?
So that's a really interesting question. It's very intuitive that you kind of picked up on that, actually, because my own childhood wasn't one where there was a lot of nurturing touch or physical contact and affection. It's just not my parents' love language. And so I grew up in a family really that didn't have physical expressions of love, and also words of affirmation is my other love language. That also isn't my family's love language. It's more acts of service. So as a child, which isn't mine, by the way.
I'm like, whenever anyone tries to do some kind of act of service, I'm like, I can pay someone to do that, right?
Yeah,
mine is quality time.
Yeah.
And words of affirmation. I mean, if you just want to spend time one-on-one and tell me how much you love me, I'm in heaven.
Exactly. So my own experience, if one of the love languages is touch, that was completely absent, really. So when I had my own daughter 21 years ago, I don't know actually what happened to me. I had a real rebirth, a real transformation, and I'd never held a baby before in my life before I'd had my daughter. And literally the first baby I ever held was my own, shortly after giving birth. So that was really crazy. I was working as a project finance lawyer in the city. I had no friends who had children. It wasn't on my radar at all, and I unexpectedly became pregnant. And then when my daughter arrived, I can only say that I just experienced what I would say is unconditional love. And I knew I had these little eyes watching me. And I thought to myself, what am I going to embody for her to witness about a woman in her power, and a woman, who is true and authentic? And how can I be authentic with her if I'm not being authentic with myself? So alongside all the pooey nappies, sleepless nights, breastfeeding, bottle feeding, all the rest of it, I sort of had a bit of a whoa, okay, this is who I am. So I gave up my corporate career and I started, I trained as a baby massage teacher back when literally no one knew what it was. So it was really out there. I went to I went to one class with Emily, and by the time I left that class in Hackney, I was like, this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life. It was that clear. Really was a bit of a miracle, really. And that was 20 years ago. And my main business, Blossom and Berry, is 20 years old. It grows and expands with love every day. And it's led me to do the most amazing things with the most amazing people all across the world. So yeah, that's why I believe in love. So yeah.
And I love that. And I love that so much, because it is that kind of real listening, that real connection to self that comes, that didn't come from anywhere in particular, it came from And maybe, and I don't know how you feel about this, or what your experience of it is, but for me, love exists in every moment, everywhere. But sometimes we have to tap into it, and sometimes we don't know how, and sometimes we tap into it quite by accident, and it can be, you know, all of those things. But just such an amazing experience to go from such a different life, such a different, like, set out, planned for me, this is what it's going to be, this is where I'm going, this is how I'm going to micromanage my life, and actually no, I changed my mind. How did that impact the rest of your life, that shift?
Well, I then had 3 children in 3.5 years, so
Okay.
that was really super busy, and I was teaching locally. But I knew in my heart, this is such an interesting conversation. I've had this quite a bit with my own mentor, actually, about the knowing, the inner knowing of, you know, what is your destiny, really, even though I had no idea how I was going to end up, you know, leading a global organization with over 2,000 teachers and charitable projects and branches across the world, even though at that point that wasn't the actual detail that I envisaged. The knowing that I was going to do that was always there. And I didn't even really question how or when, which is really interesting around, you know, the allowing of receiving of the opportunities and the experiences and the people, by not blocking with your brain what you think something might look like. And because I was in a total state of trust and surrender, doing what I felt was completely an extension of me, I never really questioned that obviously at some point this was going to happen. Like, and when I say this, I mean this at this moment that I'm speaking to you, you know, there is infinite more and infinite abundance in all areas for me as I open to receive that. And again, I don't know what the next 10 years is going to be in terms of where I'll be, what I'll be doing, but I still know that I'll be doing this. I absolutely know that. And I do not take that for granted any day of my life. Like, I know there are many people who are born and die and don't get that chance to really activate their what's inside of them. And Emily was my activator. I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't have had Emily when I was only 26. You know, I don't think it would have happened if she hadn't have come and activated me. And that's kind of how it all developed.
So beautiful. So and you must tell this story a lot. How does she feel about it now as a 20-year-old?
Well, she really interestingly, she's been to a few events that I've run, and I often sort of like wheel her out on stage and say, ta-da, this is the reason why we're all here. This is my amazing daughter, Emily. I love her. She is the heart of Blossom and Berry. And she just sort of stands there and sort of going, oh God. So at the moment, she's not open to receive the absolute, like, you know, power house that she is, because without her, literally nothing that would exist. All the baby, you know, we're almost on 500,000 babies around the world because of Emily. You know, that's how I feel she was that activating person for me. She herself doesn't have like any draw towards like being, you know, maternal like kind of vibration at the moment, as I did. I didn't have it either, not at all, until I had Emily. So that is, you know, quite interesting. She is definitely becoming much more of a wild kind of witchy woman in the last few years, as she's finding herself. You know, our rooms are like identical. We've got cats and crystals in both of that's kind of the vibe of the top floor of our house. So she is definitely coming into her own. But in the same way, to be totally honest with you, Emily, before I went to Peru, I got pregnant with Emily. Before that, I was completely lost. You know, I was doing a corporate job that I hated with people that I could not relate to in any shape or form. I was having superficial conversations about crap I didn't care about in very posh bars with overpriced drinks. And, you know, it was just, I literally felt like I was in hell. Even though from the outside, you know, like, let's reframe that to what someone else might see. I had an amazing corporate job with an incredible, like, I don't know, I was 26 back in like 2000 and back in 2000, I was earning about £35,000, which was a huge amount of money for someone at 20, at 26. I had fantastic prospects. Like, everyone at my firm loved me. Even when I tried to sort of get away, they were like, no, don't, so there was a story, if it was for me, that could have been perfect.
Yeah.
But for me, it was completely false and untrue. And the more I stayed in it, the more my life force was just going down and down. So, yeah.
And that I find fascinating, because to me, it's never another person. Like, it's a lot of pressure for Emily or for anyone to be like, you were the person that blah, blah, blah. But it's a channel, it's a projection of that energy, really, of this thing that shifted in your world and in your life. And I, ultimately, that love, that heart cracking open piece, is so powerful. And you did something with that. You channeled that into a business, into a life, into how you show up, and you emanate love to this very day, and that's a choice that you've made. Because, and then, like you said, that piece, the choosing to receive, or like opening yourself up to receive, or allowing yourself to be in this like flow of power and receiving. So many people get really stuck on that part. So if someone can, like, if there's anyone listening to this and they're like, well, I felt that way about my child, or I've experienced that kind of love, or I've had that kind of cracking open moment, and I know what love feels like, but rather than with you, it created a trajectory and a destiny and some motion for so many people. It has them go, what do I do with this, right? And then they like get terrified of it, or they close down to it, or they aren't able to receive. Do you think there's anything? I mean, you also said you teach love, which I think is a really interesting phrase. But so with all of that, is there a way to open, to receive, to not be scared of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I mentioned before, it's the knowing. So, like, I've just told you the story of, how my life has been full of love. Also, I had 3 children under 3.5. My husband had a stroke when he was 39. I had some health challenges, moved house 3 times. It's not that I've been walking around in a love bubble where I've been protected from, different experiences. That's not been the case at all. But I return to love every day. I look at the situation through loving eyes. I go to bed feeling grateful for the experiences I've had. Even I think I have got really good resilience, because I trust that whatever is being presented to me is part of the path and the journey. So I think, if you have a deep sense of love and connection to something, the thing that is stopping you from expanding into that is your mind, it's your brain, it's your thoughts that say, I can't do this. Someone's going to think something of me, or what if I fail, or this, that, and the other. But if you can just trust and truly, sit with yourself and remember that love is not, for me, a dopamine. It's not the dopamine hit. It's not the, quick shot in your arm. Wow, I feel amazing. It's, consistently acceptance, knowing, surrender, trust, compassion, kindness. That is what I feel is the roots of love. So I think that sometimes we have to discern what is love, what is attachment, what is, because love is an expansive experience. So I think to look for where you feel expanded, that's love. Yeah, that would be what
I really love that. And it is so difficult to put that sensation into words, right? Yeah. Like the closest I've got to it is I used to do a lot of metta meditation, and I used to kind of teach metta meditation, or take people on a journey where you'd be connected to this experience, this light, or this feeling, or this sensation in your body, and you'd grow it. And then trying to live with that can be really difficult, because the world is hard and sometimes and you can have a lot of people tell you to come back down to earth, or to be more realistic, or to grow up, or to all of the things, or the ways that life around us sometimes shuts down love. And I feel like it's a real gift and a skill and a choice to return to love, as you say, over and over and over again.
I think the secret is to just keep your heart open in any situation, because basically if your heart is the sort of cut the the receptacle of love, if your heart is closed because you've had difficult experiences, which happen, definitely happen, and fear closes our hearts, and love opens them to more to receive. And so that for me is the secret, is can you keep your heart open even when things are tough, things are uncomfortable, people piss you off, shit happens that you don't want, you didn't ask for this. Can you keep your heart open and feel what experience that I am going to gain from this, that I either, change my parents' behavior, which means that I can be even more loving, or allows me to just know more of myself, what I like and what I don't like. When something, in inverted commas, bad happens to you, I don't think there is such thing as a bad, good or bad, because it's the meaning you put. When something happens to you, we get to choose whether we allow more of that in our lives or not. And that is, you don't have to be like doing this on like, huge spiritual level. It's like, if you want to eat healthy, when you open the fridge, do you choose to eat something healthy, or do you choose to eat something that in inverted commas is not healthy? Okay, it's the micro, actually, it's the small acts of love that you do for yourself every day that create the compound effect. And a lot of us focus on the big things, the big relationship, having the baby, having the £1 million business. It's not that. Those things are great, but if all of your other all the other things you're doing are not an act of self-love, you're going to end up not fully receiving. So yeah, I think we overcomplicate it. Like, my big thing that I've learned literally in the last week, which is really, I'm still integrating this, so it's a little bit raw, but I asked to know, what is it that is the barrier to receiving more love, if you believe that love is everywhere, which I think both of us do. And basically the answer that I got was your thoughts. If you think that you are receiving love, like the sun comes up every day, it sets, there's food growing out of the ground, there are people to smile at every day, I've got a body, I can move, I've got eyes, I can see, all of these things. Like, if you actually think about the miracle of life, it's absolutely mind-blowingly insane. And yet our thoughts say, even though there is all of this magnificence, that boy didn't text me back last week, so that means that I'm shit.
But it's so okay. This is so, I'm like, do I want to share this? Do I want to share this? Not really. I'm going to go out and, like, this is right at the end of the year or the beginning of the new year, and we're recording it now and it's in my life. Do I want to share it? And this happens to be so frequently, and I am completely incapable of keeping anything to myself. So I have had a whole year of getting my heart broken, just again and again and again and again. And I choose over and over again to tell myself that I am someone who chooses to love, even in the face of heartbreak, that my heart was made to break and grow and break and grow. And every time it breaks and grows again, it grows stronger and bigger. And staying in that kind of tender place without armoring up is tough for me. It has been beautiful in the lessons of love, right? And so for me, my lessons of love are around not letting myself get walked all over and saying no, and not always blindly seeing the best in people, but actually following myself and saying no when things are like, oh no, whatever. And then there's this beautiful pattern of, recently had this connection, it's really lovely, and he was all the things, and I was like, oh, it's a miracle, that like feeling of like, but he's literally all the things, this is really exciting, I want to stay in this place of love. And then he made one post on social media, and instead of reading it as the beautiful post that it is, I was like, maybe he's not interested in me at all, maybe he's just trying to sell me something. And I could see that moment where I get to choose the thought. And I see the moment where the default pattern or the safety mechanism or the contraction or whatever you want to call it was happening right in front of me. And it's, for me, it's not always easy, and I don't think it is for anyone. It's not always easy in that moment to choose a better feeling thought. It's not easy to go, well, maybe, and play the maybe game, which I adore because it helps create options for me of it may not just be this way, right? But I just wanted to share that kind of real life example of how quick it is for us to go from seeing the beauty in connection, seeing the beauty in how I feel in another person's presence, which has got nothing to do with them necessarily, and then how quickly I can change that or shut that down by something happening that's over there, right? Like it's all our thoughts.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that. I've also, I was married for 23 years, but I've been dating a bit this year. And what I'd say as well as my thing, which is interesting, you know, about stories that you can tell yourself. So I'm the queen of giving people the benefit of the doubt. Like my girlfriends have now said, Gayle, you know, this is what you do. This is your pattern. You always look for the best. But that's a story as well. And what I've learned from that is I always think that's really loving, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to allow people the time and the space and everything like that. And I think that it's a mix of that, you know, not being judgmental, holding the time and space to allow people to show you who they are. However, giving people a benefit of the doubt, I broke that sentence down, giving people the benefit of my doubts, my intuition that actually says, this is not loving for you, Gayle. As wonderful as that person is, and that, you know, they are a beautiful human just like me and every other person on this planet, there is something inside of me that is telling me that there's a doubt, that this is what I'm saying. When I am Mrs. Knowing, you know, I've just told you how my whole life is based on just the knowing, then I meet a guy and I give him the benefit of the doubt. How crazy is that? So
it's such a weird thing, and I love that you broke that down. Thank you so much. And it, like, that balance of, for me, the balance has been like, am I loving somebody else more than I'm loving myself?
Yes.
And that has been a real checking point. I'm like, okay, I can actually look back and I can really see all the places, all the situations where I have loved the other more than I have loved myself. And my commitment at this point in my life, with everything that's transpired over the last year, taking it all back, right? I could have gone, this is hard, this is horrible, which it was, but also I really see the beauty in bringing everything back to me. I'm the asset. I can create again, manifesting, generate. I'll just keep building, right? And now that I've got my center, now I'm like, okay, and who else can you bring in? What else can you bring in while still holding that center of love and adding to it, rather than looking to merge or seek or siphon or whatever other else it could be that we do with love? Because I did have a tendency or a pattern to give more love than I was receiving, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, there's also some people like you, myself, I love relationships. So I love being in a relationship with somebody, and I love intimacy, and I love all of those things. So, you know, when you have to make sure that you're not giving yourself away to the concept of relationship, which is actually a bit of a kind of fictional fantasy that you've just projected that isn't actually based on reality, which again is a story. So I think, you know, I mean, I was married for a really long time and I was very happily married. So, you know, and I was married to somebody who's very different to me. And so I think that there's there's infinite numbers of people that are here to awaken you and be with you and co-create with you. And I think one of the things that's, you know, really helped me is just to remember that it's my path that I'm walking. It's my path, and then along the way I'm going to meet people, and some people will walk with me for a couple of miles, some people will drop off after, you know, a few steps, and there'll be people that are going the whole way, you know. And if I just remember it's my path, you know, this is where I'm going, and don't lose yourself in whether it's relationship or business or family. It's like, you know, that enmeshment, it happens everywhere in our lives. It's not just romantic relationships. So yeah, but if we bring it back to what is love, you know, love is expansion. And so all experiences, whether we label them good or bad, are expansive one way or the other. So love is in everything. You know, even that, you know, that thing that you really feel was terrible, that allowed you to expand into the version of you that you're.
And I have love for it. You know, I have so much love for it. You know, when I look, and I've really learned to appreciate all of, you know, and that's why I talk about the reverence in reality, right? Because the reality, the everyday little micro decisions, those pieces where sometimes it's tough, but in that toughness, I love myself for how I show up when it's tough. I get to see the part of me that is resilient or is gritty or can just be so forgiving. Like, all of that is an opportunity for love. Yeah. I'm like, okay, interesting, the drunk on love piece. Have you ever felt that piece, that like intoxication of love? How does that sit with you as an expression?
I would say, other than my children, the other two people in my life who really I felt a true loving connection with would be Nina and Alice, who we were speaking about earlier, who are the co-founders of of the charity that I support, Love Support Unite. And with them, again, this is the whole thing about serendipity and the not knowing. Like, being in the not knowing means that there are infinite possibilities. Being in the I want this means that you're actually blocking everything that you could receive potentially. So with Nina and Alice, long story short, went to a festival, bought a pair of Love Specs, which are magic sunglasses that allow you to see love everywhere. No surprise there that I found those. I then emailed the charity, said, where are you? Where are you based? I'm looking to set up an orphanage-based project to give back with my company, Blossom and Berry. Nina and Alice said, we're in Malawi. Do you want to come out? So when I was 40, I just randomly booked a ticket to Malawi, having never spoken to them on the phone, seen their faces or anything. This was just on a series of emails. As I was landing in Malawi, I did think to myself, shit, I'm actually, I don't know how I got here, but I'm literally arriving in this airport that's about the size of like a corner shop in Malawi, about to set up an orphanage project. How the fuck did that happen, basically? And then as I came round the kind of, the airport bit where you come through with your baggage, there was Nina just standing there. And I just was like, of course there's Nina. Like, they'd never met before in my life. I was just like, yeah, sure. And then I got on the back of this truck. So I said, before I left, I said to my husband, I won't ride on the back of trucks in Africa because that's dangerous. I will wear a seatbelt at all times, and I will never, I won't go out and get drunk. Well, I broke all of those, not all in that one moment, but basically they said, here's how we're getting home. There's like this massive African truck with grain and all this other stuff, and then there's just me sort of stuck in the middle of it, just going boom 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 down the road. And I was like, right, okay, all that stuff that I thought I'm just going to trust and allow, and those experiences in Malawi were some of the most, the transformational, because the being so humbled in the absolute power and dignity and strength and courage of the communities in Malawi. I've never met people who are so resilient and so brave and so courageous, and also really celebratory of life. Even if we look through like our lens of white privilege and say, well, you haven't got a toilet, or you haven't got education, you haven't got this, which is true, don't get me wrong, like that, the basic human needs are not being met. However, as a person to person, amazing people with incredible stories, fantastic bravery, with big smiles on their faces, still wanting to celebrate life in the face of adversity, like that, just like so much respect, like beyond respect for the communities out there. And then Nina and Alice I was supposed to go out once for 2 weeks, ended up being the UK director of the charity, 10 years later, trustee, major donor, and again, happened to be in a field buying a pair of Love Specs just let it happen. Just let it
And
happen.
those are such beautiful, beautiful things. I'm actually going to put a link into all of those things in the show notes, because I love the charity. I also have met Alice at an event, and it ended up she sponsored another event that I did, and we raised money and did all of that. But again, it's that that draw and connection, the waves of love. Sometimes I've really experienced it, the stuff that some people would call crazy, that I have experienced in my life whilst following the thread of love, right? Of like, this feels exciting and expansive, and I can lean into the trust here, and I know I'm going to be okay because I'm so alive in this moment. Like, those experiences for me are the love that creates love. And I feel like it's probably going to be different for everybody, but it's really important that they tune in, or one tunes into your own body and your own experience of what love feels like.
Yeah, and I think that there's there's that sense of like expansive love, but also I have had moments where I've had that sort of drunken love, but it's not been love, it's actually been attachment, and also a little bit of trauma bonding. Sorry to bring it down to a bit of
all good.
But it's like, just because the version of love that you've been served is not necessarily what love is. It might be what your body and your mind recognizes as love, but and I think obviously that's really amplified in intimate relationships. But then when you look around you and see all the different types of love that there are, I think that grounds you from that like real dopamine effect of like that intense romantic love, which is also completely supported by mainstream media, Disney, every fairy tale that you've ever read, as a little girl that was read to you. We think that love is the white knight and all the rest of it. That's programmed into our brains. And we also think love is what our parents gave us, and that's not love either. That's just what our parents were available for, and they did their best doing that as well. So yeah, I think love is that sense of safety, actually. So less of the drunk on love and more of the absolute quiet knowing, again, that you are just being, you are alive, you're existing.
Right. So I love this, and I love this conversation, and I know what my one more question is going to be in Sacrosanct Secrets. So we will draw this slowly, beautifully, carefully to an end, and I'm going to go and I'm going to ask you something about this, like diving a little bit deeper for those in that space. Yeah, around trauma bonding, and the love that you received, and how you've accessed what you've never had before, that kind of thing, right?
Okay.
Let's bring that on you now, and we'll go into that in a second. Anything else that you want to share to wrap up this portion of like?
No, just, I mean, all I'd say is my new business is the Love Millions Academy, which is helping women embrace their love leadership, really. And that trust, that knowing and that trust, that's what it's all about. That's what leadership is. And so what my invitation would be to anyone listening today is to really, truly take some time and space out for you to not have the bubble bath or the chocolate cake, but to really connect into what does a life, what does the experience of love feel like to you on a daily basis, and then just start there. Like, you don't have to throw it all up in the air and destroy it all. You can, if you want, that can also be fun. But yeah, that would be my invitation, just to take time and space for you to work out what love feels like.
Thank you. Thank you so, so much. It's been an honor having this conversation and talking around the houses, but keeping it like succinct, and getting that one invitation is just so perfect. Thank you so much, Gayle.
No worries.